All right, folks, it's on the top of the hour already, so I am going to kick off this very exciting discussion today. My name is Jeanine Niyonzima-Aroian. I am with JNP Coffee. I am with the SCA US Chapter Leadership Group, and I'm very glad to be hosting this discussion today, which we've been having every other month. And today the discussion is on Brazil and Colombia, which are two very countries that are on the top of a lot of people's mind in coffee. They are the two biggest producer of Arabica coffee and producing and exporting coffee around the world. So as I said today, I'm not going to spend so much time talking, but I'm going to really give a chance to the presenter to present some very critical information that we have to share with all of you. And hopefully we'll leave some time at the end, about 20 minutes, for anyone who has a question to bring a question forward, or anybody who has any inputs to bring the inputs as well to this issue. So in case you might not be aware, Brazil has been going through some drought, and Colombia has been going through some unrest that have caused some logistical challenges above and beyond everything else that we have going on globally right now. So our community has been asking that we bring some experts on these two countries and really share with us what's going on and how to hedge and what to think, and is it today issue or tomorrow issue. So with no further ado, I'm actually going to go around and present the panelists that we have today. So we have Juan Marcelo from Brazil, who's going to be presenting some research information on what's going on today and what we need to be thinking about all of that. We have Vanusia as well, who's from Brazil. She's the head of president of the Specialty Coffee Association in Brazil. And we have Arthur as well, who's on a call from Brazil. I think he also lives in the US, and who's also on the same chapter leadership group that I'm part of for the SCA US Chapter. And we have Carlos from Caravella, who is in the US as well, and he's from Colombia. And we have Danielle, who is also from Colombia, who's on the call as well from Texas. So I'm very excited to stop here and really, Juan Marcelo, I'm going to start with you because you are the one who have some data that we are so looking forward to hear. If you can just start by telling us what's going on and what your research has been able to tell us, and we'll go from there. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Jenny, first of all, I'd like to thank Vanusia and the Brazil Specialty Coffee Association for the invitation, and also Specialty Coffee Association USA for the opportunity that you are giving us to expose some data from Brazil with the coffee sector. Okay, I will share a screen with you so I can start to talk about some climate problems that we from Brazil are having. Okay, hold on a second, please. Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's go. Okay, so the presentation objective here today is to show the climate problems that Brazilian coffee growing has been facing and its impacts for the next harvest. We'll talk a little about the harvest 2021. We'll also talk about the harvest for 2022 and 2023, okay? So to start, we can make, I'd like to ask you, how is the Brazilian coffee crop going this year, 2021? At this point, more than 95% of this year's crop, 2021, has already been harvested. So we are almost finishing the harvest for the cycle. In this way, it's possible to have a very clear vision of the impacts of last year's drought on this year's crop. Regarding that, this year's crop would already be smaller due to the physiological effects of the negative biennial for this 2021. Okay, about last year's crop, according to data from CONAB, which is the National Supply Company, an agency under the Ministry of Agriculture, which is responsible for surveys of crop in Brazil. Last year's crop reached a record level with more than 63 million bags. As for this year's 2021 harvest, which is nearing its ends, according to the latest CONAB survey, the production must be something around 46,880,000 bags of 60 kilos of coffee. Okay, therefore a decrease of almost 26 when we compare the crop of this year with the crop of last year. With that, there are more than 16 million bags less than in the last harvest. So what about the quality of this year's crop? Let's compare the harvest of Arabica coffee and Robusta coffee from years 2020 and 2021. First, let's have a look at Arabica coffee. In the 2020 harvest, 48,740,000 bags of coffee were harvested against 30,730,000 bags that are being harvested this year, 2021. So the 2021 harvest of Arabica represents a decline of 37% compared with the year before. We're talking about a retraction in the offer of Brazilian Arabica coffee around 18 million bags. Regarding Robusta coffee, in the 2020 harvest, something around 14 million bags of 60 kilos of coffee were harvested against something around 16 million bags that are being harvested this year, 2021. A small additional of almost 2 million bags. Thus, it's possible to see that Brazilian Arabica coffees with better quality characteristics will have a reduced supply in this year of 2021. But besides the lower production due to the biennial of the crop for this year, 2021, what else can we say about the intense reduction in the production of Brazilian Arabica coffee of this year? The reduction is not only because of the biennial production cycle of Brazil, it's also due to the serious lack of rainfall in the year 2020 and also in the first half of the year 2021, with a consequent increase in the water depth to levels above the historical average. Rocafe Foundation has an important monitoring work through some phytosanitary warning stations. The main objective of these stations is to monitor climatic conditions and their implication on the phytosanitary aspects on the vegetative growth and on the leafing of coffee plantations. Okay, so the data in this graph were taken from the phytosanitary warning station in Virginia region. The red line refers to the availability of water from 1947 to 2020, okay? The green line refers to the availability of water in the ground during the year 2020. In the year 2020, we had an historic drought between March and November. As an example here in Virginia, which is an important coffee production region, from March to November 2020, it normally rains something around 730 millimeters. However, it only rained 370 millimeters. Because of the serious lack of the rain, it's possible to see in the green line of the graph that water deficit caused by this drought between middle June and early December. Of course, it had negative impacts for the 2021 crop, which would already be smaller due to the bienniality of coffee culture. And this reality is not only for the Virginia region, but for most of the Arabica coffee production regions in Brazil. So that's what justifies a production decrease of 37% for Arabica coffee in Brazil for this year, 2021. About crop for 2021, we can conclude that the Brazilian coffee crop, which would already be lower due to the biennial production cycle of Brazil, is being even smaller due to the high levels of water deficit generated by the lack of rain during the year 2020 and first half of this year 2021. And this is occurring in many important Arabica coffee production regions. How should now we'll talk about crop for 2022. How should it be the Brazilian coffee crop for 2022? Because of the biennial cycle of coffee culture, the crop of next year, 2022, should be a crop year with high production performance, with a lot of coffee to be produced and offered. However, the reality for the Brazilian coffee crop for 2022 will not be that because of the weather conditions that has already affected the potential of coffee production for next year. I'm talking about the frost that occurred in July 2021 in important Brazilian Arabica coffee production regions, and also about the lack of rain that still is causing high water stress in many important Arabica coffee production regions. So let's see it better. The facts of frost of July 2021 on coffee plantations. About the impacts of the frosts, it's certain that there will be a loss of the production potential of Brazilian coffee crop for next year, 2022, due to the frost. Upon a request of the Organization of Brazilian Cooperatives, OCB, Procafé Foundation is working on the survey of the impacts of the frost on coffee plantations in Brazil. The official report should be already in a few weeks, and although we can't talk about numbers yet, it's already possible. Although we can't talk about numbers yet, it's already possible to see that the damage is big. The methodology of work that we are using to survey the impacts of frost on coffee plantations here in Brazil is based on two steps. The first of it, the remote sensing, which consists in the mapping of affected areas, which is being done through images obtained from remote sensing satellite, and field research. The research is happening in affected areas to obtain more specific data. The field research and to collect the data about the level of damage suffered by coffee plantations, and also to quantify the average losses. So the field research is a study of qualitative and quantitative nature. The survey is covering just areas that are at risk. So we're talking about those areas that we know they may have been affected by the frost, as it follows: part of Minas Gerais state, São Paulo state, and Paraná state. Let's see it better in a map. Okay, I'm going to make another circle to better specify the affected regions. So as you can see, the frost.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Você precisa ir mais rapidinho, que nós já estouramos o tempo.
Oh, okay. Okay, here we have Minas Gerais state. Minas Gerais state, we have 235 hectares. Here we have the south and the east of Minas Gerais state with 670,000 hectares. Here São Paulo state with 210 hectares of coffee, and here Paraná state with 35 hectares of coffee. Total area of the research are something around 1,150 hectares, which represents a production of something around 24 and to 34 million bags. The level of the damage in plantations are divided into two kinds. The level in the adult plantations caused by frost are due to the burning of leaves and of the branches, which are essential parts for the flowering and the fruiting process. And they are divided into light damage, moderate damage, and severe damage. And we also are making the survey into level of damage in new plantations that were affected by frost and that would start producing into 1 or 2 years. Let's see them. This here is the light damage in adult plantation, okay? Is when the plant suffered burning in leaves and in branch, but in a small part of them. Here we have moderate damage in adult plantation, is when the damage has reached a considerable part of the coffee tree, but leaving a part in green. Here we have severe damage in adult plantations, when all the leaves and branches were completely burned, leaving the plants completely in brown color. When we walk through many coffee plantations here in Brazil, the initial impression we have is that more than half of adult coffee plantations affected by frost had this kind of damage, okay? And here we have damage in new plantations. So those new coffee trees that would start producing in the year 2022 or 2023, and it will not produce anymore, okay? So about the effects of frost of July, the information about loss of production for 2022 due to the frost will be available in a few weeks. But that's not all. We're probably going to have further loss for 2022 because of the drought that is still causing high water stress, okay? Here we can see that in the blue line that the water depth is similar to the last year. The typical water balance to the region in September is something around 25 millimeters. But at this time, we are with 550 millimeters of water depth. So the conclusion for crop of 2022 is that in a few weeks, we are going to have sense of the production of the loss for 2022 due to the frost. However, it's early to say a number related to the loss that the drought will cause. We need to wait for the flowering period. What can we say about Brazilian coffee crop for 2023? It's too early to talk about numbers, but it will probably have some losses. Why? Because of the future intention of coffee growers in the frost damaged plantations. Let's see. Many of the producers of coffee growers are planning to make resepa pruning, and those areas, those coffee plantations with resepa pruning will well, we will have its production returned into 2 or 3 years to the condition, to the normal conditions. And many coffee growers are planning to leave the affected area, so we won't have any more production. Okay, so the conclusion for crop of 2023 is that although it's too early to say numbers about Brazilian crop for 2023, it's not difficult to understand that it won't be the same as it would be before the frost. So let's keep the fingers crossed for the weather help us from now on. And that's all. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Jean-Marcel, for your presentation. And as I had mentioned earlier, this is going to be available after this talk. So we actually already spent almost half of the time listening to the wonderful data that Jean-Marcel has just shared with all of us. As he had mentioned, there's going to be more data coming on the frosts after we have some time for the collection of the data to come forward. But the question remained the same. I think that's, we're all wondering, okay, what does that mean? We know we won't have enough Arabica coffee as we are used to receive from Brazil. I'm sure that so many of you are going to be having some questions. Please put them in the chat so we can be able to share with everybody and hopefully share, about what do we do now, what do we do in the future as well. But I want to go to Arthur as well, who is also from Brazil. At first, there was a global pandemic, as we had also mentioned. Now there is a series of natural disaster that we are currently facing. Help us understanding on the operational perspective, how different this year is from last year, and what have what should we be doing as a business to change now what we are doing now and knowing what's coming forward. So I will let Arthur just share his 2 cents about the situation.
Hello, everybody. I am Arthur. I work for a company called Our Coffees, and we are in United States and Europe market, and we are also coffee producers. Actually, the scenario for this year, it's completely different from last year. We are facing a lot of logistic issues. João just talked about the weather, the frost, the dry season, so I will not touch on this stage, but I think this year and the next year will be very challenging due to the problems, the issues we are facing now. We are not having logistic support from the vessel companies. We are facing a lot of delays. We are facing a lot of unavailability to put the containers and to export the coffees. And as we talk to our customers, all we have to do now, the market in United States and in other parts of the world, we have to prepare to support the coffee that imports coffee. We have to support the companies that imports coffee because the coffee will be hard. We will not have a lot of flow of coffee exporting due to these logistics problems and to the low yield crop that we are facing to the next years. So what the market have to do is to help the coffee companies that import coffees, like individual ones or other ones. And the skyrocketing of the prices is already making the exportation very hard as well. The cost of exportations and all the other issues are being very hard. We really, I'm sorry, my connection just go bad. And we really need all the markets in the United States, in Europe, around the world to keep support us.
Thank you, Arthur. I have one question. Actually, I'm going to come back to Jean-Marcel later. Is the Robusta coffee is actually has not been significantly impacted in the Arabica coffee. So the question is, should we maybe trying to think about how to use Robusta coffee more than Arabica coffee? So that's just one question I had in the back of my mind as Marcelo was presenting. But I will go back to Vanusia to ask her a question, because she's from the Specialty Coffee Association in Brazil. And my question for you, Vanusia, is how are the producer across the supply chain responding to a current crisis, and what can you report for us, particularly in terms of like innovation approaches that we should be thinking about, knowing that you are specifically focusing on the specialty coffee side of the business.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. And my answer for you, Jeanine, is that we are talking and we are relating with Arabica coffee producers and also with Robusta coffee producers here in Brazil. The SCA was the first association to recognize officially the quality of the Robusta coffees too. And we are supporting all of these people, and we are thinking that this is all about climate change. And we need to find ways to do our jobs better. And the producers are, at this moment, looking for some researchers for some more resilient varietals of Arabica coffees, and also from some waiting for the end of this report that João mentioned, to have the support from the federal government with fundings to restructure their areas and to think about to be in the Arabica coffee production or business, or to go out of this and to go to some other plantations, other kind of cultures here in Brazil. As you know, here in Brazil, we have very good areas for coffee that can be used for sugar cane, it can be used for soybeans, for corns, and they are waiting for some ideas and some kind of roads that the government can give to them, and some support from them to make this feasible.
Thank you, Vanusia. With no further ado, I'm going to actually go to switching to Colombia. That has been facing some unrest, and also been challenged, with the global supply. And I heard some roads, have been closed, and even making it even more challenging for to be able to move coffee. As you know, all this has to be done in a timely fashion. So I know Danielle and Carlos, you have, I would say, emphasize in two different parts of the country. So I know one is going to be speaking from one part of the country, and the other one from the other part of the country. I'll start with you, Danielle. Can you just tell us, how are the producer in your country responding to the current supply challenges, and what are the immediate impacted, and also what are you seeing long term as a solution to this problem?
Thank you, Jeanine. I just returned from Colombia a couple of weeks ago, or less than a couple of weeks. And as you said, there was some social and civil unrest because of some measures from the government. And that created stress in the coffee industry, because Colombia doesn't have a very strong road network, and it's basically it's just one road to the port. So if that road is closed, then there's going to be hard to move the coffee. So that happened during the first semester of this 2021, and that affected the mitaca or traviesa, which is kind of the fly crop or smaller crop in most of the country. And so producers have been, so that created some problems to move coffee, but also at the same time, there has been some climate issues. And while in Brazil, there's a stress for the water, in Colombia, we have had more than enough water since the beginning of the year. Basically, since January up until now, it hasn't stopped raining in many areas, so that affected flowering in most of the farms. And because of that, we have seen that this main harvest that it's supposed to happen starting in October is not going to be, in terms of volume, as good as it should be as well. So while the social unrest was going on, and we have problems moving coffee to the ports, and not only to the ports, but moving coffee from the farms to the mills, the exchange ratio between the Colombian peso and the dollar was increasing, meaning that the Colombian peso was depreciating. The price paid to the producers increased a lot, even for the low grade coffees. So producers, but it happened between harvests. So many producers couldn't take advantage of it, and because of that increased price increase, which was something between 40 to 50% in just 3 months, basically, the internal price paid to producers. A lot of producers that committed coffee in advance have defaulted co-ops and have defaulted exporters, and basically all these and the exports in Colombia are very concentrated in 5 or 6 big exporters. So those who got defaulted are buying the coffee in a higher price. So the producers that have coffee right now are getting good prices, but there's not that many coffee to be offered, and whatever coffee is available is going to be bought by these exporters that have been defaulted. And what we're going to see that has prompted to have really high differentials in Colombia right now. And what I think, and we've seen it before, when the coffee price differentials are really high in Colombia, that tends to switch demand from Colombia to other countries like Peru, Guatemala, Honduras. So that could that decrease in demand from Colombian coffees, because they're too expensive right now, could lead to reduce those differentials in the future. And I just want to mention that the social unrest kind of fuel some movements, social movements within Colombia that could happen again next year, because next year there are presidential elections. So and because of the road network that we have, and maybe if things are not under control, could affect a little bit more next year. But because so basically social unrest, lots of rain, and actually La Nina is coming again, so more rain is expected. We're not seeing good flowering in trees. This harvest is going to have less volume than expected, and probably next year we're not going to see a good harvest either. So the projections, Colombia has been stable around 14 million bags per year. The expectation right now is to maybe reduce 1 million of those bags for next harvest. So I want to turn it to Carlos to if he has more insights.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Carlos?
Yes, thank you, Jeanine and Daniel. I think just trying to wrap this up among the different situations we're seeing, this is a bit of a perfect storm for coffee. And I think it even goes back to end of 2019, just as the COVID pandemic was hitting the markets. As you recall, Honduras had a very bad year in 2019, 1 million bags less of coffee. So of course, this created the first ripple effect. When Honduras has no coffee, the malts, which of course the Brazil Arabica in some cases can be used for that, people were going for more malts. So that created the first pressure of internal differentials, where people were like, if there's no Honduras, I'm gonna need for more Colombia. And that pushed differential for even the lowest exportable quality by a third, a 30% increase within a few months. So Honduras, not enough coffee. People now were going back to Colombia, and that created the first wave of pressure of internal differentials. Then, of course, the pandemic hit. And as you recall, some people are crazy for toilet paper or water. Others were crazy for coffee. So there was an unexpected surge in demand for the spot coffee, or coffee almost available to ship immediately, because everyone had in their minds, there's not going to be enough toilet paper tomorrow, and there's not going to be enough coffee out there. So that was the second nail in that coffin, because now you were seeing high demand for miles, and now people are getting crazy about, is there going to be enough coffee? So there was an unexpected surge in demand around March through May of last year, where people were like, I need to have enough inventory if something happens in the foreseeable future. And adding to that, as Daniel mentioned, not the greatest weather situation for the last few years, and having a less concentrated harvest has even further created more pressure into higher differentials. Most farmers, as you can imagine, do tend to sell whatever they produce. As a farmer has a more concentrated harvest, that will mean larger volumes of coffee being traded into the market. If the crop is more pronounced throughout the year, then they'll have more occasions to sell. Therefore, they're going to be able to hold on more coffee. So if the price is not right, farmers can just wait because they don't have the pressure of that next week's harvest and next week's harvest if it's a more prolonged harvest, which is something we started seeing at the end of last year and is currently being seen now. So a lot of small sporadic flowerings throughout the year. So on one end, there's going to be coffee for the entire year, but on the other, less concentrated peaks and less availability of coffee. And now with the whole Brazilian situation of less harvest, and I'm going back to your question, like most roasters will not replace an Arabica with a Robusta for, I'm going to say, mostly obvious reasons. So if there's not enough Arabica out in Brazil, where do you get that Arabica from? And of course, the easiest solution is Central and South America. So differentials will continue high because there's not enough coffee. There's not enough of concentrated production in any of these countries. Honduras is slowly going back up, but still not back up to where I think the market needs. So you have this pool of Arabica producing countries that produce between 25 and 30 million bags of coffee every year, depending on seasonality and harvest. You had Brazil, which of course was the big wild card with a 20-30% drop. But that 25 to 30 million pool of miles of Arabica, it's almost unchanged. A million back here, a million back there. So now there's going to be more people looking for that pool. And with basic economic law, that creates an increase of offer, and therefore prices, at least in the short term, will remain high. Everyone has been surprised by seeing the market rally 50 cents in 2 or 3 months. And internal differentials being flat, absolutely flat. I'm going to say not even 2 or 3 cents have moved. And why? Because demand's still too strong. And the defaults that Daniel was mentioning is adding even more fuel to that demand, because that exporter who got defaulted by a farmer needs to fulfill that contract. So he's going to pay whatever it takes to fulfill it. And that it's adding more and more fuel. So it's actually a vicious cycle. And logistics being very difficult, taking more time to move coffee from Colombia to any market, less coffee in Brazil. I think, and I'm not trying to cry wolf here, but I think the times of coffee being cheap are long gone. Probably for the next 2 years, we will have to be used of seeing higher prices, because there's not the Brazil wildcard, which was the backup for many people. Oh, it's cheap and good. Now there's 20-30% less Brazilian, and the miles pool will remain more or less stagnant. 1 million bags less of Colombia, but maybe 500,000 bags more of Honduras, and so on and so forth. So I think from the roaster's perspective, planning is going to be key. We're switching into a little bit of a seller's market. So I think you need to plan as a roaster probably 6 months, a year into the future, because that availability that was out there a few months ago, like you can just call and get a coffee out here, it's going to be more difficult because more people are competing for that coffee. Until Brazil is back into that 65-70 million production, we will probably continue seeing expensive coffees across the board.
And I just want to add, Jeanine, to what Carlos said. From the producer side, something else that, because of the pandemic and logistic issues globally, I saw a lot during my visit that the cost of living in Colombia has increased a lot. So producers, yes, they're receiving more money, but their cost of living has increased. The price of fertilizer has increased between 20 to 30% as well. So it's difficult for them to say, and the ones that lock down in contracts at lower prices are saying, well, I couldn't take advantage. And some of them have are ethical, and they're kind of delivering the coffee that they committed to, but they had to take a hit on the prices of the cost of living and the price of fertilizer as well. So that's gonna keep costing some, this is gonna cost to the producers more to produce while they're gonna receive more money as well. So it's kind of a balancing act between receiving more price, but also a cost of production increasing as well.
Correct. And that fertilizer increase is everywhere in the world. I mean, I think even Bloomberg did an article 2 or 3 days ago about how in some cases you are seeing 40, 50% increase in fertilizers across all products, which is something many people kind of forget about. Despite that increase in fertilizers, I think Daniel mentioned it, there are definitely some good farmers who have been delivering their contracts and fulfilling their contracts, but they definitely are aiming for that. The next cycle of negotiation, prices will have to adjust. So planning is going to be key. The C market, we all know it's probably going to stay in that high level until something happens drastically in terms of Brazil, and differentials will remain expensive. I mean, we just got out a few days ago that just the production of August in the case of Colombia was 16% lower than August of 2020. So that's already pretty massive. And from a 12-month rolling basis, we're at close to 7.5% lower production in Colombia as a whole. So yes, Honduras is slowly getting back on its feet, but now Colombia is seeing a little bit of a down cycle. So I think planning, having good partners, I will not get tired of saying that, partners who will deliver that coffee when roasters need it is key, because logistics are very difficult. And I think everyone here has to contribute to make the supply chain as smooth as possible with these challenges that we're all facing. And
thank you, Carlos.
Just adding to Carlos, Jeanine, I have an invitation to all of us here. It's a challenge moment, and as Carlos said, it's a moment to do everything together. I think the major risk that we have, it's the replacement from the consumer, from coffee to tea or for other beverages. And we need to avoid that together. And probably this is an invitation to all of you to think about it, and let's find a solution or better options, better alternatives for all of us.
agreed.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Manusia. Thanks for adding that on. And thanks for all the presenter, really. I have so many questions, myself. And I think what I wanted to say is what's happening in Brazil and Colombia is also affecting even small producing countries like Burundi, where I'm from. We are seeing the same issue, less coffee, less, shorter harvest and a higher price, because the sea market, dictate everything. But like you had mentioned, although the producer might be able to get more money, they have to pay for other higher costs of other things to, like the fertilizer and so forth, to be able to keep up. And I was actually, I had another business chat about a month and a half ago. And one gentleman, Nelson from Bolivia, he said, it's always very easy for a consumer just to pay $12 for a glass of wine. But when a consumer sees $5, of a cup of coffee, they scream. But although the cost of actually producing coffees is higher than the cost of producing, wine in some cases. So I guess as the price of coffee continuously to go higher, how are we able to communicate this to our consumers as well? And also how are we able to, prepare the roasters and knowing what's going on from some of the biggest producing countries in the world. So I'm going to kind of just pause a little bit on that, because I really want to kind of hear as well from the panel, from our guests, because we had 39 of them, and I know they all have a lot of questions. So instead of the panelists continuously discussing, can we just pause for a second and see if we have some questions from the audience? And please feel free to open your mics and as well as your cameras.
The issue is that the coffee doesn't give you the buzz as the wine does.
Yes, good afternoon. I was curious. Our friends from Brazil did mention that the farmers are looking for alternative crops and perhaps even government support to produce them. Do they feel that the alternative crops would bring on as much income as coffee, especially as we move into a higher pricing at this stage?
Hi, Stephen. I can say to you that for other crops here in Brazil, you can have 3 crops a year. And if you put all these together, they can be more profitable, okay? If you look for a short-term plan, if you look for a long-term plan, no. But the problem needs to wait for the cases, for example, in my case, my farm, I lost 50% of the plantation. It was one of the cases that João showed to us that it's a severe frost. Then we are thinking about a long-term plan, and then we will replace our plantations and plant coffee again. Or can we think about some short-term plan and replace these to another crops? This is the decision that we need to analyze here in Brazil right now.
Okay, Vanusa. Okay, about another crops. We have some coffee growers that are talking about, but in a small percentage. Okay, and those who are planning to crop another culture. That's those producers that the pros usually have higher impacts, like in the lower parts of the coffee plantations area. So we see that the coffee growers that are more exposed to the risks of the pros and the areas of their plantations, they are planning to put another culture. But we are also surveying the intention of plant more coffee. And we think there are more coffee growers planning to plant than coffee producers planning to abandon and to eradicate their plantation.
Actually, in my vision, we are from Campos Altos, one of the city that produces a lot of specialty coffees and the higher quality coffees. And all the city is dedicated to the coffee. And in our point of view, we are not gonna to leave the coffee. We just had a lot of, in our history, we just had a lot of issues during the history producing coffee, and we are not abandon the coffee.
I want to say to Stephen also that in some parts of Colombia, there has been a lot of avocado planting for export purposes, and that has been replaced in some coffee areas, and especially some high altitude areas where specialty coffees have been produced. And avocado has shown to be a little bit more profitable than coffee, and also pays better for labor than coffee. So it's in some areas of Colombia, in Antioquia specifically, there has been a shortage of labor during the harvest because the harvest of avocado coincides with the harvest of coffee, and they pay like 3 times more per day of what the coffee farm would pay.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks for asking the question too, Stephen. Anyone else in the audience? This is your platform. All right, I don't like to stay too quiet for too long, so I always have questions. So I think, you know, the question really that I'm here sitting here and wondering, because Brazil not only is one of the, you know, the biggest producer of exporter as well of Arabica coffee, but they also consume, you know, one of the country where they consume their own production. So contrary to other countries where coffee is utilized as cash crop and it's exported. What issues are you seeing or challenges as Brazil itself needs the coffee that it's producing to be used locally, and in terms of like how much is it going to be left to be exported around the world? Do you see that as a potential challenges that we have in terms of coffee that we are expecting to receive, you know, in the near future from Brazil? And this is from anybody from Brazil. Feel free to jump on that question.
I think we will ask our consumers, our internal consumers, to take a little bit less coffee, and then we can offer this coffee to the world. This is always like this, and I think we will be in this the same way. We already have a very good, not only for the consumption in total here in Brazil, but also for the specialties. We have a very high consumption here in Brazil in our days. And but I think the Brazilian consumers can understand the situation that we will face for this new these 2 years, these 2 following years, and we can manage that and offer as much as we can to the world.
Okay.
My point of view, I think the coffee is not just money; it's a passion. In our point of view, we have already a brand here in Brazil that we offer some of best specialty coffees we produce. Also, the customers in a lower price. So I think we can also the same high quality coffees we can export and we can serve the worldwide customers. We can serve here. So I think managing everything good, we're gonna to fill all the markets.
Okay. In my point of view, we have a critical situation, and it's a great challenge. There is an enormous risk in the supply-demand balance for next years. Global coffee stocks are not high enough to cover the shortage in supply. For example, Brazil, the largest coffee grower of the world and the second largest consumer of the world. With the lack in the coffee production due to climatic problems, Brazil will probably not have enough production for at least 2 years to meet its domestic consumption and its exports. So we have a critical situation referring to the global supply-demand balance. And I think the prices will adjust it. I think the price, as Carlos told, will adjust the supply-demand balance. Okay.
Yeah, Carlos, I think I'm going to you, and you might have already addressed this question, but is there any advice that you might be able to provide to your, to the roasters in general, based on kind of like what you see, not only just in Colombia, even what we're hearing in Brazil?
I mean, of course, every roaster has its own view on its own needs. If you needed like a rule of thumb advice, at least from what we see as a company in the 7 different countries that we work with, first and foremost, plan ahead. I mean, which is difficult because, of course, we're just moving out of the peak of the COVID pandemic. So a lot of people are very cautious, like, oh, I went long last year, then pandemic hit, So a lot of people are thinking of hand-to-mouth needs, which I completely understand because of what had just happened in the last 18 months. But the challenge here and the difficult decision you need to make is how can you balance that conservative approach of like, I don't want to be very long in coffee because you never know what can happen, as it did in last year. But if we do not plan ahead, there might be a point where you have to buy really, really expensive coffee or just get whatever is available, which usually you want to get what you need, not what's available. So that's the balancing act that is easier said than done, that I think most roasters have to do. Like, how can I balance my needs and at least guarantee part of my supply for the next 6 months to a year without maybe going to crazy in case, I don't know, we have another peak of Delta or COVID elsewhere in the US or in the world. But if you wait too long, you might be facing a situation where the coffee you want, it's either not available or it's way too expensive. So planning would be key, of course, and I think this is a general business rule. Work very closely with your supplier and know who you buy from. Sometimes a few cents here and there are tempting, but then when prices go up, that's where I kind of joke with our teams in an origin. That's what separates boys from men. And that's when people stop delivering and start defaulting. So be mindful of who you do business with and diversify. And by diversify, I mean like maybe if you're just focused on Guatemala, maybe do Guatemala and Salvador. Try to have different backup plans because the logistical situation we're seeing in Brazil and Colombia, it's being seen everywhere. So maybe today Peru is difficult. So if you have a lot of eggs in the Peru basket, maybe Colombia can be a backup. And if it's not Colombia, it can be Ecuador or Central America. So diversify your supply needs in terms of origins, because once we've seen, at least in the last 6 months, that those logistical challenges, there's a peak for every country. And that's where we are all. Colombia was the civil unrest. Now Peru is being difficult with Brazil. So you need to diversify if you needed my free advice.
Thank you. Thank you. So this call is usually goes for 1 hour. So I want to thank all the panelists to be able to find the time to come to this platform and share with everybody. And please submit what you want to hear next. So we had this call specifically in Brazil and Colombia because this was a request from the community. So we are here to serve the community. So any specific request you have, please bring them forward. We'll make it available and possible for you as much as possible. And I'm also going to ask Juan Marcelo when he's going to have the last piece of the research available, if he can please share with us so we can post to the SCA, Instagram or social media or any other places. And also if you have any feedback for us, we are here for you, and I'm here to really trying to find solution to these global problems that we are all facing today. Not only just the pandemic, but also we are hearing a lot of climate change affecting not only the world, but also our industry. And so we are all open to exchange ideas and solutions to this problem. Like Vanusha has said, it's an invitation for all of you to bring in your thoughts and your solution to our current challenges in our industry. And I want to thank every one of you for participating. As I had mentioned, this is also recorded discussion. It's going to be available for your friends and family and clients to listen to down the road. And also feel free to share with others. So with no further ado, I want to say thanks to all of you for being here and hope to see you around soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.